you guys. Thank you all for coming. And I don't know why I get so nervous about this, but I think it's because the people of Butte know history. And so I'm like, I have like 30 fact checkers right here for me. And like, you're frantically going to be making mental notes or writing things down. Like, we're going to check that. We're going to newspapers.com that. We're going to check it on her. Yeah, so kind of today, I tend to talk a lot. So if I'm talking too much or I'm missing something, stop me. I just get too excited. And I feel so bad for you guys in the front row because I may even throw things. So please interrupt at any point. Just holler out. I might not see a hand. And we can get some questions asked somehow. So today, how it's going to go is we're going to go just over the Beaverhead Deerlodge National Forest and what that encompasses. Archaeologist, a little bit of laws, Indigenous archaeology, historical archaeology, the Ajax mine in the town of Baghdad. Oh, and I recently found, well, somebody recently dropped off a bunch of photos on my desk, and this was one of them in there. The only thing we know is that he was one of the first forest rangers down in the Madison National Forest when it was that. So I thought he was a wonderful one to welcome us. Nope, still the wrong button. Okay, so the Beaverhead Deerlodge National Forest, you guys have all been there. It's just right around the corner. It's 3.35 million acres. That is a huge forest. It is the largest in Montana. It is the Beaverhead and the Deerlodge combined. We have 5 districts. We used to have 8, but they are now combined. And it's a very diverse environment. We have timber up north, and we have some sagegrass lands down south. We also have wilderness. We have several wildernesses here. And as you all know, wilderness is something that's not accessible motorized vehicle. So we're either huffing it on foot or with 4 legs, right? We employ we employ 143 permanent. That's kind of an ebb and flow thing, and roughly 100 seasonals every summer. Honestly, that is not enough folks to manage 3.35 million acres. That encompasses logging, ranching, mining, grazing, all of the recreations. We actually have less folks here than on the forest that I started my Forest Service career off over in the Colville National Forest. And they only have 1 million acres. And so I come here and I'm like, all right, let's strap some boots on and let's get it done, right? So over there we had 4 archaeologists. Here we only have 3 permanent archaeologists. Nope, still wrong button. Yep. So, archaeologists, this is honestly what people think of. One of these 6, well, I should say one of the 5 things. Not many people think of this when they think of archaeology. Constantly, all the time. And now since Harrison Ford has been in town and stuff, so I'm the only archaeologist on the planet that has not seen Indiana Jones. And I wish Kate was in the room. She's coming. She's like, Amy, we're going to watch that. We're going to spend a Saturday. We're going to watch all the Indiana Jones. And she met Harrison Ford and everything. And she's like, what would you say to him? And I'm like, I've never seen any of his movies. And I'm an archaeologist. So, and literally my mom constantly, oh, did you dig up any mummies today? Any mummies today? And I'm like, no. Anytime I'm on an airplane and so I'm doing some work on an airplane, the person next to me, and we all do it, we all look at what the person next to us is doing, and they're like, oh, archaeologist, so what's the best dinosaur you've dug up? Well, and I'm like, oh, it's paleontology, it's not really my thing. Dead people and garbage, that's more my thing. And yes, every time I show up on a timber sale, they're like, oh, the archaeologist is coming out today. And literally, this is what every single one of the loggers out there thinks I want to do. And I'm like, no, I actually do that to the cabins. I hug the cabins. And what I really do, though, is I do presentations, and I do a hell of a lot of paperwork. Still a wrong button. It's actually not true. Like he says, one simply does not get a job with an archaeology degree. I just talked about you. And now she's showing up fashionably late. Hi. Sorry. Always. But you know what? I got a bunch of degrees and then I got an archaeology job. But it's one of those things where I kind of did just fall into it in like kindergarten. In kindergarten, I knew I was going to be an archaeologist, and I just said I'm going to be an archaeologist, and I did. And so I don't know what he's talking about. So I am a historical archaeologist, as is Kate, actually. She is also a historical archaeologist. For those of you who were here in August during our presentation, we were working with the historians at MSU. And I love showing this to the historians because they are, they like to sit in their little rooms and research. And then us archaeologists, we have the tangible objects. We have the thrills and frills of objects that I can actually, ooh, I have fly-ins. How do I do that? Oh, there we go. So we're constantly getting told that in every meeting. Archaeologist is just the expensive way to learn history. That's what historians tell us too. They're constantly like, oh, well, I don't need this tin can for you to tell me anything. And I'm like, but you kind of do. Because we do one of 3 C's. We can confirm history, we can contribute to history, or we can contradict history. And that one is one of my favorites. I love going to a historian and contradicting everything that they have researched their whole life. I really don't. But there are some moments. One site that's not on this forest is actually on the Lolo National Forest. It's called Poacher Gulch. It's over by Plains. And for years and years and years, so you have to hike up this drainage, and once you get to the drainage, there's a cabin, and then there's beautiful terraces carved into the landscape. And for years and years, the last 30 years, people are, oh, that's the Chinese. We were talking about that. It's just off the grid enough where they can be protected. They're in their element. There's water. There's terraces. They are famous for building terraces and rock structures for farming and for whatever other needs. Well, they did a soil analysis, and the archaeologists found out that they were growing corn. The cabin was about 1920s. It was owned by 2 women. Archaeology contradicted history and confirmed that it was 2 female moonshiners that were up there growing corn. It's so cool. I know. That's the other thing is archaeology, particularly us flamboyant Elton John historical archaeologists. We are often giving voices to the voiceless folks. We're going in, we're getting those tangible objects of the Chinese, of the African Americans. One of my passions is the African American diaspora. And so we're finally able to give some of that voice back to the historically voiceless. Still wrong button. One time, I'm gonna get this. So, little does the Forest Service know, most of what I would do, I probably would do for free and actually do for free on, a Friday night or even a Saturday. I am doing most of my newspapers.com research. I will come up here on a day off when you guys are open and do some other research up here. But this kind of stuff here, this is actually what the Forest Service pays me to do, because I'm not going to do this stuff on my own. Like, I really don't care to go out on my own and do Section 106, which we'll get to in a moment. Or ARPA violations. Like, that's the kind of stuff that I constantly am like, all right, this is the stuff that I actually get paid to do, is this nitty-gritty, wordy crap over here. This photo was a pretty good one from this summer. This is Dale Olson. He is our ranger down in Ennis. He is wonderful. And to have the ranger of the district out there, fixing fence with us, like that says something. We work with some really good people here. As my supervisor is standing in the back doing nothing, boy, I wish he was here to call him. So Section 106. Section 106 is one of those archaeology things that are mandated by law. We have to do it. Anytime federal money or it occurs on federal land, we have to go clear the land. Now, this is because a lot of archaeological sites, both indigenous and historic, were ripped to shreds, obliterated, gone, no more, by the government, by private folks, but we want to save and protect some things. So they made this NHPA Section 106. Basically what this does within the Forest Service is we have our summer seasonal crew. That year, this was actually 2020, this was my crew over in the Colville. I was able to hire 9 seasonals in 2020. It was a lot of work. We had to have multiple vehicles because we couldn't have, everybody that was in a vehicle had to have their own door handle. It was all of the COVID precautions. It was a crazy time. But we still had a record year for clearing land for a timber sale to go in, because there is destruction of the land, there is digging up of the land, and archaeologists must go through make sure that that land is okay to get ripped up. If there is something that we want to protect, we go ahead and flag it off. That's when I come in and I talk to our timber sale admins. I talk with the loggers. I educate the loggers out there, which I'm sure, you know, most of them are educating me on language most of the time. It is just a really fun process, though. I did want to read an excerpt. So Ehlers Koch, he was a Pinchot boy back in 1902. He got his degree and became a Pinchot boy. He was a forester. He is actually one of the folks that set a lot of the Beaverhead and Deerlodge National Forest boundaries. He was a forest supervisor on the Lolo very, very early on. He grew with the Forest Service all the way up through the New Deal. He went through CCC era, he went through the WPA era. He helped a lot of what our fire standards are now, which is another thing, another entity that we have to participate in Section 106 on. Because, right, that skidder right there, he is going to cause destruction on the land. When you put a dozer on the land, that will cause destruction. That's actually a dozer line up on the top there. So an archaeologist has to go through either on foot, on a four-wheeler, on horse, in a side-by-side, and make sure that there is nothing of historical importance that we're going to destroy, even in time of fire, for fire suppression. We will also, I get to ride in helicopters now, so cool, and I love helicopters. And that little bird spot up there, that was one of our cabins down in the Alder Creek fire down by Wise River. And we couldn't get up there soon enough. Usually we'll go up and we will clear it around it. But one spark ended up on that cabin and it is no longer with us. R.I.P. cabin. So some of that came from Ehlers Koch. Are you familiar with the Lolo Trail, the Nez Perce Trail over on the Lolo National Forest? He talks about it, and this is in 1934. The bulldozer blade has ripped out the hoof tracks of Chief Joseph's ponies. The trail was worn deep by centuries of Nez Perce and Blackfoot Indians, by Lewis and Clark, by companies of Northwest fur traders, by General Howard's cavalry forces, by Captain Mullen, the engineer, and by the early day forest rangers. It is gone. In its place, there is only a print of an automobile tire in the dust. It's no longer with us. It's gone. 1934, he recognized that we needed to, I just got goosebumps. He recognized that we needed to start preserving this stuff. And so when I go out there on fire, I'm usually one of the first ones. I work with the heavy equipment bosses, that's what that guy is there. I work with operations, I work with the incident commanders. And I tell them, you know what, a really good example down on the Goose Fire. We had a quarry site, and they wanted to put a bulldozer over the top of that quarry site. To protect what? There were no houses. Lives weren't being, because lives, the protection of lives, that will always trump archaeology, right? But at that point, I know quarry sites are closely related to burial sites. Now, I'm not going to go poke and prod and find burials. That is something I don't like to do. I do not like digging up dead people. That's why I'm not an Egyptologist. But I know that a lot of our stories coming from the Crow, the Nez Perce, the Chauvin, I know that they potentially have ancestors buried in that, and I don't want that bulldozer bringing it on up, or to wreck something that's been there for hundreds of years. So that's part of that Section 106 process. Section 110, this is also mandated by law, but it is archaeology for the sake of archaeology. This is when I am allowed to let my academic brain go wild, and I am allowed to say, you know what, let's take horses up into the wilderness, and let's just go see what's up there, because it wasn't always wilderness, right? Like, wilderness is something that we, modern-day humans, have constructed. It is something that now we say, Ehlers Koch, he does not want automobiles to go in and wreck wilderness. He wants it to be a place where we can go and find ourselves and enjoy what it's supposed to look like. And so we take the horses up. We're the only Forest Service in the nation, the heritage aspect of that has horses. That is so cool. And the Forest Service pays me to learn to ride a horse. That was over the Pittler, and We actually went up one of the old trails in that picture. And I have the range gal, the middle gal, she is in charge of the stock program over there, and then her seasonal there. And they were actually looking for plant life up there too. So the only other part of my job that isn't always fun is the Archaeological Resource Protection Act part. Now this is the part where it's like a PSA, and I have to tell you to don't go loot the sites because I'm about to get into some really cool stuff. And, you know, with things that, if in better condition, it might be worth $200. Don't ever say that to a federal archaeologist. And so this is where I just say, you know what, go, if you guys know where these sites are, go look, please. Like, part of being the Forest Service, my mission is to protect the land and serve the people. And by serving you, I get to share this kind of stuff with you. It's no good if I just keep all of this information bottled up inside me. And I will literally explode if I do that. I have got to release this energy. But I'm not giving you this information to go, you know, look for things that might be worth some money. And if you do, that could be up to 5 years in prison and $20,000 in fines. This picture here is hilarious. About a month ago, we got a call from our LAO, our law enforcement officer. He says, "So, did you know about the dynamite up Basin Gulch?" I'm like, "No, I don't know about no dynamite up Basin Gulch." And he's like, "Yeah, so Air Force EOD is coming down. They're going to actually make a big boom, and they don't want to wreck the cabin. And so you should probably get up there and record as much as you can before they get up there and do the big boom." And, oh yeah, okay, so we were actually down by Horse Prairie, south of Dillon. We got into our rigs and drove up to Basin, and it was really impressive. They got rid of quite a bit of dynamite with hardly any boom, and I was kind of bummed. Like, I wanted to see a big boom, you know. And but then this was part of that same historical site. The thieves have everything in here that was ever worth anything. And it's kind of true. It's, you know, often what we're left with, we're not left with full objects. Archaeologists, we're constantly dealing with only half a deck as it is, but this is usually what we're dealing with. Just this little sherd of ceramic, and I have to tell you a whole story from this thing, which I can, maybe later, but we have to stick on track. Okay, so, the different types of sites. I've kind of broke this up into Indigenous site types and historical site types, just for ease and quickness of the presentation. I have done quite a bit of lithic analysis. I worked under Dr. Anna Prentice up on a Bird River collection. She was the first one to accept me as a grad student, and I was like, you know what, Anna? I love this. This is really cool, but I have a hard time just looking at these itty-bitty rocks all day and like making this large story out of something where I love to be able to find this and find it in a Susan Roebuck catalog, because you know, I know what it is then. But on the BBRD, we have everything here from quarry sites to lithic scatters. We do have Native American camps. We have rock art sites. We have drive lines and jumps. We do have the trails. The Nez Perce Trail runs through here. And fasting beds. This one here is a fasting bed. A lot of us grew up calling them Vision Quest sites. And my very good friend Aaron Bryn, he is now the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer for the Crow, he says, quit calling them Vision Quest sites. We don't always get visions when we're up there. We're up there, we're starving ourselves. Call them a fasting bed, we're fasting. Yeah, we want a vision, but we don't always get a vision. And it was actually his great-great-grandpa that had a vision of Custer coming. Aaron Bryn, we're going to try and get him here for you guys. He's an incredible man. The projectile point on the top there, that was an ARPA violation site. That was actually and I come from a ranching community and a ranching family, so don't hate me for this, but it was a rancher that got impatient, and he just started digging fence lines, and he started digging up bad stuff. He ended up putting his fence line right through teepee rings. Bad, yeah. And then this came up, this projectile point up on the top corner. That is actually heavily retouched too. So that little puppy had been loved and carried around for a long time. That one is the tip of my finger. That's a bird point. It's a little obsidian bird point. It's adorable. And then over on the corner there, some of you may have been to this one. It's actually on the way past Dillon down by the reservoir, and it's on BLM. But the little hut right there on the left side, We're trying to figure out what the hut represents, and I'm not wondering if maybe it's sheep herders, and that sheep herder thing might come back here in a little bit too. But does that represent the first sheep herders that came into this territory back in the 1830s? I don't know yet. I'm working on it. Sheep herders are something that's really near and dear to my heart recently. So indigenous sites we have sites as old as 14,000 years on this forest. It's absolutely incredible. Some of you have heard of Clovis. That's pre-Clovis. This one here is a Clovis cast. It's a replica, but we can pass it around. This one is from the Anzac site, which is also in Montana. So we have, real confirmed old sites in Montana and on our forest, and we're looking for more. And the up to 100 years ago, that one kind of ebbs and flows too. It's just kind of a number that I threw out there because I liked it the day I made this PowerPoint. So more historic sites. Both of these are ones that I found while I was out on fire. That top one was actually on that goose fire where they wanted to put a dozer line through the quarry site. This one was over on the haystack fire last year. And I still don't know how authentic that is. We're still working on that one. We often don't find the pretty full projectile points because looters get them first and then they sell them on internet. I'm not calling you out for that, I'm so sorry. And then of course a wiki up over on there. Again, that one's on BLM, and that one is still being used. But it butts up so close to Forest Service that we go monitor it for BLM quite a bit. Wrong button? Right button? Okay. So historic sites. This is kind of where I really flourish. I love the historic sites. On this forest, we're dealing with logging and mining and homesteading and fur trapping, government administration sites. I didn't bring those books. And ranching and grazing. So the admin sites. We have some of the oldest guard stations on this forest. We have one over in Pony. There's one down off of Sheep Creek by Lima. And it's something that I've really gained a lot of interest in after reading 40 Years of Forester by Ehlers Koch. And for anybody who has not read it, I highly recommend that one. Great book. A quick read. This one here is a fur trapper site. And this was this summer up on the West Fork. The beginning photo, that was up on West Fork off of Skalkaho. That one was the hog trough fire. And I get a call from the guy over in the red, and he's like, so I have this cabin. Do you know about it? Okay. Like, what are you talking about? Who are you? And he says, well, I'm so-and-so from the hog trough fire, and we want to put a fella buncher and a dozer through this area, but we found a cabin. Well, a lot of this hasn't been surveyed because it's in a roadless area. Well, they've turned it roadless since we do have a road going through there, but it's admin use only now. And we just really want to put this in, and we don't know because, well, we know we're not supposed to wreck this kind of stuff. And I said, all right, well, I'll be there this afternoon. I was down past Ennis at that time. So I get in my mobile again and head on up to Skalkaho. And he's trying to describe this to me, and I'm like, it sounds like a cabin. A cabin is a cabin. He's like, well, there's not much left. And I'm like, well, okay, okay, I'm coming. And so we get up there, and the fella buncher, he'd already gone through, and once one of these fella buncher operators and any of the heavy equipment operators have been on fire with a fun, I like to think of myself as a fun archaeologist. They know to look out for this stuff, and he had already put his little line around it to protect it, and it was so heartwarming. He was protecting this cabin. He didn't even know what he had, but he's like, I think it's something, so we're going to protect it. Has anyone read Tough Trip Through Paradise? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, this is along that path. When he says, can you get me to the Bitterroot Valley? They told me yes. Down the creek from here, about 1.5 miles, you will come to the Salish Buffalo Trail. This trail crossed the Rock Creek near the mouth of Ross's Fork. After it leaves Rock Creek, it follows the West Fork. I don't know if this has anything to do with Andrew Garcia. We may never know, but this is a point in history that we don't have a lot of these cabins left anymore, right? It's 4 logs high. Where he's at right there, that's the fire pit place in the corner. We know it's a fur trapper's cabin because of these types of accounts. It's expedient. There's not one single nail holding that thing together. And that was used as their warming up there. They're quick built houses. They're usually just meant for one winter. So when I saw it, I was like, I'll be damned. you do have something here. And then I started reading them this. This was another one I found on the Alder Creek fire, the North Star Mine. Again, another situation where they're like, so we have a cabin. I'm like, okay, well, I don't have that on my map. Let me go out and look. So I head on up there, and this one is one that has a connection to Butte. So we get up there, and the first thing I notice are these logs on the window. I had not seen that on any cabin in any of the forests that I have worked on. And growing up in the Beaverhead Deerlodge, I hadn't seen that on any cabin here. We know that that's traditional grizzly bear territory. Is that something? I don't know. So then we start poking around a little bit, and what they're using between the logs is this 1927 calendar from Blanchard's here in Butte. And it's still in perfect condition. You know, the rodents have gotten it a little bit, but it's still in really good condition. So we have this date. We know it's not any older than 1927. I mean, unless there's time travelers, which we could talk about that too. And we also, so then we have the faux alligator skin. This picture doesn't do it justice, but it's faux alligator skin trunk that we found in the 1931 Sears and Roebuck catalog. It might be a little bit earlier than that, but I haven't been able to find it yet. But so we have this rough date range, and this is all just real quick while I'm out in the field. And then we get back to camp that night, and I start doing some Googling and looking at the mining layer on the maps, and I find out that in 1931, John Templeman from Butte staked that claim and built this cabin. It's pretty cool. Yeah. Has anybody else seen this on any of the cabins? Or any idea of what? I have no idea. Do you have any idea? Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because I come, so then another one of my responsibilities on fire is bringing up that goose fire again. I get there and I wear a hot pink Forest Service hat, and the rangers like it because they know where I am in the sea of, large, tall men. They can finally find me. And, well, once people found out that I was the archaeologist, I had people coming up and they're bringing me artifacts out of their pockets. And I'm like, okay, where did you get these? And they're telling me, and they're taking points, and they're doing a really good job, and I'm like, so please put those points back. And so one of my jobs is morning briefing. I give a little speech. And I tell them that we have to keep them in situ in the area where they're at. Please take a photo, take a point, send me that information, show me that information, drag my happy butt out there to show me where this stuff is because I want to know, I need to know. But I tell them when I lived with the Northern Cheyenne for a summer, an elder by the name of Linwood Tallbull, and we're sitting around the campfire one night, and he says, why do you white people constantly put my ancestors' tools in your pockets, in your drawers? And I was like, well, it's cool, Linwood, what do you mean? And he's like, you know what, when my ancestors make those tools, when they're making those points, parts of their souls are going in there. And I don't really like my ancestors' souls in your drawers. And I'm like, I don't really like that either, Linwood. So that's a story that I tell. And that particular fire, we had the Northern Cheyenne hotshot crew there, and they really appreciated it. And that was another one of those heartwarming moments where, you know what, I might only be one little human, but I don't collect. I do not collect things. That faux alligator skin trunk, it's still sitting out there. We already been through the ARPA thing, so if you guys go and collect it, you're in a lot of trouble. And, but that next morning I went to the fire camp, and because a lot of the guys, they want to know what we do and what we find and what the information is. And so I told them that about the faux alligator skin trunk. And all of them were like, oh, well, that's a female's trunk. That must have been his wife's. And I'm like, well, not necessarily, in that time period, like, that was an expensive piece. That was something to show prestige. When you're taking that faux alligator skin trunk on the train with you, you look like something pretty cool. The Ajax Mine. Has anyone been up there? It's over in the Beaverhead Mountains, about an hour southwest of Wisdom. It's a wonderful place, and it's scarier than hell to actually get up to. You make it all the way up. You can get to this apart in a truck or a snowmobile. There's a snowmobile route that goes right by this. But when you get up to the actual mine, it's four-wheeler side-by-side only, and it's on like a talusy slope, and it's really scary and fun all at the same time. And well, anyways, this boiler thing here, I actually know if anyone knows what that is, please tell me so I don't look so stupid up here, came from Butte. It came all the way from Butte. And good old Ajax Noyes, he wrote about it in his book. And he wrote about how they did not have a road for this to come in on, and it came in on, oh gosh, it was 3 horses, 3 Clydesdales, drug it up the hill, and then they were like, well, we should actually just kind of lumber some of this stuff out of here, and then we'll use that for something else, and it'll be a lot easier, and this is how we should do it. And we're finding this stuff. We're able to contribute to history. It was also such a beautiful day up there. So the town of Baghdad. This is my most recent discovery. It does have connections with Butte, but you guys are the poor suckers that get to hear about this first. So this is down in Madison County, down south of Sheridan, and it is kind of a lost town. The last time anybody wrote about it was in 1989 in the newspaper, and the gal wrote in, "Oh, Baghdad, where are you?" And that was the last anybody's written about it. They do write about it in the place names book that most of us are familiar with. Every now and then you'll come across something about the town of Baghdad up Bibbins Gulch in some historical documents, but not many folks have researched it yet. It's kind of this forgotten little community. Think about the time period. So we have gold being discovered in Gold Creek. We have gold being discovered in Bannock. And we have gold being discovered down in the Ruby Valley and in Virginia City area. Well, the earliest newspaper account that I can find referencing the town of Baghdad is 1864. That's right there in that happy spot of like Montana is being formed. This is a super important camp at this point. And this all came about this last spring when my supervisor, Mike Ryan, he's a wonderful guy, very smart. His dad was a forest archaeologist for years. I'm up at California Creek outside of Luray, and he says, "Oh yeah, it's pretty cool placer mining up there. You know, probably pretty early on. It's that 1860 stuff. And oh, have you found the town of Baghdad yet?" Like, Mike, what the? How are you talking about this time? And he says, "Oh yeah, that real early GLO record. Yeah, people are familiar with GLOs. They are. You can search them for free. BLMGLOs.com, and you too can become a map wizard." With historic maps. This one is 1871, and they reference the town of Baghdad. We see that it had 10 buildings. There's a road going up there, and then when you get the other township range map, it has road to Baghdad. So it's kind of something pretty important up there. And so then I, of course, get on Google Earth like any good archaeologist does, and I start noticing all of these placer mining deposits that look a lot like, some people say Chinese diggings, but it's reminiscent of that super early 1860s, particularly in Virginia City. You see them all over the place down there. And so then I make myself a happy little map and grab the boyfriend and the dogs, and I'm like, "We're going to find a town today. Put your hiking shoes on." And he's like, "Yeah, it's hunting season. I'll take my bull for a walk." And so we all go out, and I find roughly on the map about where it is. So in these maps that I make, the orange is considered high probability. As archaeologists, we can't obviously survey every foot and every inch of the forest. So we tend to stick to high probability, low slope, easy terrain, where humans are going to be, right? We go out there, there's my dog, and we ground truth it, and we find those tailing piles, that really early mining. My dog, he was just so happy to be outside. And then this picture here, you can't see it that well until we start putting some handy dandy PowerPoint lines on. It's a foundation. That, okay, come on PowerPoint, is right where that first square would be. So, the poor boyfriend, he's a heavy equipment operator. We met on fire. He was a heavy equipment operator that I was telling, do not put your dozer through something. It turned out okay. He didn't put his dozer, we went on a date. But I'm also training him as an archaeologist because he does go out on fire. He will see a lot more ground than I do, and it was really great. He had a friend come up from Texas hunting, and when I finally met the friend, he says, oh yeah, did you see those rock alignments up there? And I was like, no. He's like, yeah. He pointed out all these rock alignments and all of this really fun stuff. So archaeologist in training, he's doing a great job. So then we get to, I'm teaching the boyfriend how to transect, and we're looking for things. And I was like, he's not doing his job. He is not going to earn his lunch money today. And then he comes across this bar up here. It's a part of a wagon. And then this is the road. Like, it matches up with my map absolutely perfect. And then I start reading newspapers.com. because that's where I get all of my information. And they talk about a store, a saloon, a blacksmith shop, a meat wagon route, a public school, and a cemetery. I've never heard of anything referred to as a meat wagon route, but I loved it. And we were on the meat wagon route. I don't know how to confirm a meat wagon route, but I'm gonna try. And then a cemetery. So I'm like, wait a minute. There's dead people up there. Another spot for dead people now. I gotta protect the dead people up there because I was doing this for a timber survey. But I don't know where these dead people are. And as we know, like, some of these people are buried on talus slopes. Some of them are buried just on hillsides. This is so rocky up there, there's barely any flat ground. And when there is going to be flat ground, I guarantee they're going to want to put a log landing there. And so I'm like, oh gosh, now we have to find this cemetery. So I'm looking in all of the in all of the newspapers, trying to figure out, okay, how many people may be buried up there. As of right now, I think there may be 4 children and 2 men. 1 might have been murdered. It's hard to say, but there's a newspaper account that talks about this guy he's missing, and then his roommate is like, oh yes, well I found him. He's over here and he's dead and he's been gone for 42 days. And he was almost decapitated by himself, cutting his own neck with a razor blade. And so the coroner of Virginia City gets involved, and the coroner's like, I mean, this is also the vigilante time, you know, we have all sorts of other stuff going on. And so the coroner's probably like, yep, sounds good to me, like this guy just is done, okay, well, next. And so I'm wondering, like, Virginia City, and Kate actually worked down in Virginia City for a number of years, and they've kept a lot of stuff. I would love to go through the coroner's reports and see if we can find that, and then see if by chance we can find the razor blade, or see what kind of razor blade it was, and then maybe we can recreate it to see if somebody can, in fact, maybe almost decapitate themselves with their own razor blade. I don't know, I think this is a new podcast. I think we're onto something. And then we're almost done, don't worry, don't worry. So back to the sheep herders. This is one of my upcoming projects I'm going to be working with is the range gal out of Butte here, and she wants to start talking with the permittees that have cows on the BBRD and getting their life stories, and then I would go through the GLOs and see how the land has helped and changed. And then down in the Madison district, down in the Gravelies, this is a sore topic for cowboys and people that have cows, because actually sheep were the first ones to graze our land here. And when you tell that to someone with cows, oh boy, it's this whole can of worms you open up. And this was another photo that was just dropped down on my desk. And then I did find a newspaper article about the same time period as this, when they were taking the sheep back over Norris Hill down outside of Ennis there, and all 1,500 sheep died because they ate a weed. And I know, that's so sad. But I always have to leave every presentation with the Gifford Pinchot quote, because not only is my job to, protect the land and serve the people, but my job is also to help promote the greatest good to the greatest number of people for the longest time. And I think that heritage and archaeology within the Forest Service has such an impact with that. We are preserving these long-lost towns of Baghdad. That PowerPoint slide is annoying. We are trying to protect and preserve this and share it with you folks.
How do you think it got its name?
Oh, I know that. Newspapers.com. Yeah. So it was a gentleman that was from Baghdad, and he was the very first person to stake a claim up there. Yep. And then here's my contact information for anybody who wants to get a hold of me. I work for the government, so we don't have business cards. We don't give us business cards. But feel free to contact me by email or phone or any way. And this quote from the Virginian, this was a newspaper out of Virginia City. It's wonderful, and nothing illustrates historical archaeology better, you know. And I think the archaeology of the cowboy is another one of those voices to the voiceless. They were kind of a transient group of people early on. We had range riders, and I don't know if we'll be able to find those empty sardine cans, or can we?
No.
Right? Yeah, isn't that fun? Yeah. All right, is there any questions? Yeah.
Well, I have a lot of questions.
Yeah, let it fly.
Where to start? So, like the fur trapper, they're really old. If we're out trouncing around the woods, are you guys able to tell they're the fur trapper ones because there's virtually nothing left? They're shrunk the most.
Yeah.
To differentiate
Good
that
question.
from, like,
Good question. Yeah.
something they're
So you do get an eye for them after a while, right? And it is like they melt into the ground almost. And it depends on which forest you're at, because even on the Helena, Lewis, and Clark, it is a little bit different than us. But over on the Colville, where I started my Forest Service career, all of our cabins looked like that, even ones that were built in the 40s, because it's really wet. It's the furthest inland rainforest, essentially, you know. But for the most part, here on the B-Bar-D, particularly anything south of Butte, we are seeing just expedient, you know, kind of not well done notching. Usually there's no hardware attached. There might be a door hinge. Most of the time you won't find that. Those fireplaces in the corners, that's a real tall tale sign. Back to Baghdad here and being able to ground truth this, we're actually looking at trying to secure some funding for this. It's a super duper zooped up metal detector basically that does ground penetrating radar with it. And we'll be able to see what's under the ground and what's in and around it a little bit easier than digging, because I don't dig. I don't agree with digging. I know sometimes we have to do it, but there's a lot of issues with it. You're Swiss cheesing the land for what? Curiosity purposes type of a thing? Like, if I can confidently say that this is a fur trapper's cabin because of those three qualities, I'm good with that. You know, and then historical archaeology and historical documents. They are our BFFs. Yeah.
Amy, is that the closest thing to a building recognizable at Baghdad that you found?
Yeah. So the other sad part about this area, and I didn't actually add this one to the slideshow, but cows have been grazing it for the past 70 years, off and on, and so it's really beaten up by cows. There is a private inholding, this white strip here, that is a private inholding. I haven't gotten a hold of that guy yet to see what he knows and what he has seen, but that's next on my list. This is all just in like 2 months ago. So I hope to find a little bit more. I hope that our zooped up GPR metal detector device will be able to help us a little bit more. And that is an area where digging may do a good thing. Yeah. But a lot of it is the rodents have already done the free digging for us. When I was looking in the rodent backfill piles, I was finding aqua glass and clear glass. It's pretty exciting. I know this one, it is related to Butte though. When you're looking at newspapers.com, there are several articles that link Bivens Gulch to Butte, and because of that mining component, you know, and the folks down in Virginia City are constantly coming up here and seeing what's the latest and greatest here in Butte. There is an article about a Bivens Crick gal getting married to a Butte man, and then she wanted to live down there, and he's like, no, we're living in the city, we are not going to live down there. And she's like, well, Virginia City is a city, it may be the capital. And he's like, no, we're living in Butte. So relatable. Yeah.
Yeah, I know there's an interest of, we got a few folks that I know that are actually visiting old gold mines in the area
Yeah.
and looking at the mine dumps and assaying them.
Yes.
Are they protected, these dumps?
So, are you talking like the can dumps, or are you talking like the mineral dumps?
Talking about the mineral dumps.
The mineral dumps, so that is under a whole different ball game. That one is the mineral rights actually, you go through like BLM and or archaeologist, and that is a whole different thing. Some people own the rights to that mineral, right? So when I get involved, it's when there's a historic structure built on top of that. And then that is what's protected. Yeah, you'll see some of, oh, what is that? I can't think of the name of it. GRE, the Gold Rush Expedition folks, where they come and they supposedly get the rights to the minerals on public land, and then they sell that. And in a lot of their postings, they say that they're selling the buildings also, and that is not true. Those buildings are protected. One I'm working on right now is down in the Madison Valley, and it's the Goldschmidt mine, and they are opening up some of the shafts, and they are going through some of those tailing piles, and there's some head frames on top of them, and they're asking me what to do about those head frames, and I'm like, can't do anything, you're keeping it there. Figure out a different way there, buddy. It's not always easy. It's a hard conversation sometimes. I had the same conversation over there in Colville, and a mysterious lightning storm, March 1st, a lightning bolt burnt down the one and only head frame on the Colville National Forest. Those darn March thunderstorms.
Yeah.
Yeah. And boy, that's a can of worms. Yeah.
Anthony, on that cabin with the wood over the window, was there anything that could indicate it, like in a shutter, to open and close the window?
Yeah, no. They are nailed in there. They are solid. Like, you can't get those puppies out. And every window is like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Harder to break in, maybe.
Yeah, what did he have in there? That alligator skin trunk? I think that's the mystery right there, yeah.
Now, why wouldn't they take that trunk and put it in the museum?
So, very good question. We can, if somebody wanted it, they can contact us and I can go collect it, and we can work out agreements to put in museums. But I don't collect this stuff. So my past life, 8 years ago, I worked at a museum. I was in charge of a massive inventory project at the U.S. Naval Museum on the Washington Navy Yard. And so this is a federal agency that has, Kate was my supervisor there. This is an entity that has massive amounts of money, right? Like we would think, like we need to preserve this heritage and this history. And there's no money. There's no money in preservation. There's no money in collections. And so we end up collecting this stuff, and then it just ends up sitting in our rooms. And then, eventually I die or leave or whatever, and that information, yeah, it's in a database, but does anybody actually read that kind of stuff? A few of us do. But more often than not, this stuff just gets lost then in a cabinet, and then somebody comes along and throws it out. And so for me, I prefer just to keep this out there. Plus, I'm not bringing back any spirits. I don't know who's attached that in. Somebody might have been in that trunk. I am not going to touch it. Pretty fun. Yeah.
With the sites formerly known as Vision Quests, the fasting, how do you identify that? What do you see? What are your characteristics on the ground?
So Aaron Bryn has his whole master's thesis is on this, so for a really good time, go read that. But oftentimes they're these U-shaped beds, right? And he's Crow, so he talks about them over in the Priors, and he talks about the orange lichen. Over in the Priors, that orange lichen that grows in a circle will grow a centimeter every 50 years, and so you can confidently date that. So I now have that lens, and when I am out and about, I particularly up on ridge tops, in areas where I know traditional cultural places are, I'm looking for these U-shaped low beds. We'll often also find white pine growing out of them because they were bringing the white pine boughs as a bedding, and they were also eating the nuts. So sometimes that vegetation can lend that clue too. Yeah.
To apply the same regulation you got the wilderness areas, you mentioned those, but you have a lot of wilderness study areas. So you apply the same regulation to the wilderness study areas?
For heritage, yes. I can't speak for everybody else because I'm heritage centric, but for heritage, yes. Yep. And then that's when why we're getting horses specifically for heritage. I mean, I love going for hikes, but sometimes it's just easier and nicer on a horse and a mule, you know. But yep. And the same. That's when we do that section 110, the archaeology for the sake of archaeology more so. I often can't justify section 106, which is the destruction section, to go do survey in wilderness. But we are legally required to do archaeology for the sake of archaeology also. And so that's where we get to go into wilderness. All that being said, though, when we do have a fire in wilderness, and if they decide that they're going to start using trails as suppression lines, because they can't put equipment in there, but they can do hand line, and they can beef up a trail, they will bring in an archaeologist on those circumstances too. For the most part, though, we steer clear from all of that and let fire happen. Yeah.
Do you ever leave signage at these sites telling people not to remove items or giving them some information about what?
Good question. That's one of those double-edged swords, you know. There's pretty much two groups of people on that. Ones that say, yes, let's do that. Ones that say, no, don't. So kind of the stance that we're taking right now, we do put up those ARPA violation signs and the don't dig signs on ones that have a lot of traffic. We're not putting them on everywhere because, again, we're the government. We don't actually have a lot of money for this signs, you know. We're a super underfunded department, and we can't afford those signs all the time. It is my mission and goal in life to get as much of this kind of stuff out there, and in the future I hope to be able to do some of these like tours type of style so we can get those boots on the ground. And I do get a lot of pushback from that also, because essentially we're bringing looters to loopholes, you know. So it's tough. I mean, and I can put the fear of God and I can threaten, and I do have like the authority to give these fines out, but it only does so much. I took this class down in North Carolina for archaeological protection, and it was a really cool class. It was archaeologists, and we were partnered with law enforcement guys. And then we learned how to do this together and work better together. But the best part was I found out about the Tennessee Valley Authority, who's another federal entity, and so they were there. They have horrible looting problems down there in Tennessee for lithics and arrowheads and projectile points, tools. So they get to dress up with their, like, undercover with their law enforcement guys and go bust people. I have brought it up to our law enforcement. They're not on board yet. But I'm going to try. Yeah.
Do you, if I came in a little late, so
Oh
sorry.
yeah, no, you're fine.
Do you find any evidence of Native American, like more permanent or regular habitation or use at higher elevations? I've read about that.
I love this topic. Yes, high elevation archaeology sites. It's one of those, they're kind of just now being studied because we're starting to lose the ice caps and we're starting to have less snow longer, right? And we do have evidence of that here on the Beaverhead. The Golden Sunlight Mine over in, perfect, yes. So Craig Lee has done a lot of work on that one, and he's a high elevation archaeologist. And so that one, although it's not high elevation, that we typically think of 75 feet and higher, but that's right on that cusp right there. And Craig Lee has used that as part of his study area when he was working for the state. But there's another book I'm thinking of. and it is based in Colorado, but I would highly recommend it for you. It'll come to me here soon. Meltzer, it's by Brian Meltzer. And he talks about a camp right outside Colorado Springs that's up 9,600 feet, and they know it's a winter camp. Yeah, so cool. And they would have had still some snow at that point, you know. But you're up above, you're able to see. You can see the animals, you can see if there's trouble coming. What I'm finding down in, because the reason I'm really on the South T Roots area is because there's a timber sale about to happen down there, so I've been focusing my study down there. On the south side of the Tobacco Roots, we have a site that's up 9,300 feet. And when we went up there in end of June, there was still 4 feet of snow. I literally got stuck in a snowbank. And I'm thinking, how in the world are people getting up here, you know? And why and when? And when I'm starting to read these newspaper accounts and starting to read some of these oral histories and documents that we have left, I'm learning that the natives, when the gold rush came in, the natives are getting pushed up into those crevices, and they don't care what time of year it is. It's safe.
And there's no mosquitoes.
So true. that is a great point, and why down in the Big Hole. There's few native sites down along the borders of the Big Hole River, but we all know how bad the mosquitoes are down in the Big Hole. Like, those things are this big, but they will have a militia and they will pick you up and take you. And so what we're finding on the forest is actual travel routes around the Big Hole. All of those projectile points there, those came out of one of those sites that's on the outskirts of the Big Hole. Because they knew it then too, the mosquitoes are bad in the Big Hole. Forever. Pretty fun. Kate, have you been to that wiki yet?
I don't think so, no.
Yeah.
Just that other one that's also on Beaverhead.
Yep.
Or it's BLM
BLM.
land.
Yeah, BLM, they operate very similar to us. We have more timber sales, they have more range, just because of the types of land. The archaeologist out of Dillon, the BLM arch, she is just wonderful and just a wealth of information. Yeah,
She's the one who brought me there.
yeah. She is of the same school that we are. Like, we need to help people understand this and protect it with us, you know. Like, you guys are the best site stewards we have. You're the ones that are out there on the land. I mean, I am too, but I'm not everywhere. But now all of you are going to be out there protecting and learning too.
You showed a picture of a pictograph. You should tell them the difference between
Ooh.
pictograph and petrograph.
Yes, and actually, if anybody has kids or grandkids that would love to have a Christmas party, let's talk, because I also do this on sugar cookies. I should have brought sugar cookies today. So rock art, that's when we have the actual pigment, right? We have ochre rendered with some fat, we have charcoal rendered with fat, and we're making those pigmented pictures where petroglyphs are pecked into the rocks. In Montana here, Tim Urbaniak, he is an adjunct professor out of MSU, he's in Billings. He does a lot of the studying on this, and he has not yet found any petroglyphs, the pecked rock art, on this side of Montana. The closest one to us, I think, is just on the outside of Bozeman. But over in eastern Montana, they're all over the place. We have more pictographs rather than petroglyphs. And boy, the petroglyphs over there are incredible. And then, of course, there's Pictograph Cave that is both petroglyphs and pictographs. But yes, for kids, it's so much fun because you get some sugar cookies and some frosting, and you can really work out some aggression. Mm-hmm. Oh, I did that for the Forest Service kids one year, and I found out that this one kid did not like his sister.
Did you say that was up around Big Sheep?
This one is right north of the Clark Canyon Reservoir. I'm trying to think of, what's that cabin right there? Rattlesnake Creek is also right there. Can't think of what that cabin is called. I can take you on a Google Drive. I can Google Drive there. And that's right off. You just get off of one of the exits and go down this little dirt road, and you can see the pictographs too. There is some over by where you were talking, over by Douglas Creek too. That one's on private. Yeah.
I just had a question about the names of the mines. If you're looking at the older maps, late 30s through the 40s, the name of the mine is on the map.
Yep.
if the map is even identified on newer maps, it'll say like the section 6 mine. Why did they eliminate the names of the mines?
Yeah, because a lot of times the mines were associated, the names are the people's names or a family name, and sometimes those families wanted that gone when they sold the mine, because they then took that name with them elsewhere. Other times it's not actually a legal thing, it was just on that snapshot in time, and then when you go look at the mine records, it's something totally different. There's several different reasons for it. Yeah.
You were talking about can dumps?
Yeah.
We've got a Forest Service lease at Georgetown Lake, and it started in 1923, my grandfather.
Yeah.
And behind each cabin are mostly milk, you know, those canned, condensed milk
Yep.
cans,
Yep.
and broken pottery and glass.
That's
And then he also worked, when he lived at that cabin, he worked west of Georgetown Lake on that big ridge.
okay.
And they used to cut the trees, bring them up the hill, take them down, put them in the lake, and take them to Anaconda, the smelter. But he says that when they were cutting the trees up there, they found big Doug fir that had burial platforms on them with skeletons in them. And they left those because they considered it like a cemetery.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't mess with dead people.
But my grandmother told me that in 1962.
Oh, yeah.
But it's all gone now, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, that some of that stuff, we have some oral histories of that also on other parts of the forest, and some of them were taken by forest fire, right? Like, a lot of times people will say, well, do you want, you know, we know of this, do we need to protect it? And a lot of the protection for forest fires came in play, well, after 1979 for sure, but really within the past 30 years. But when we talk to the tribes, because I don't know how a tribe wants to handle things, so we talk to them, a lot of the tribes say fire is natural. Let it go through. I was on the Trail Creek fire last summer down by the Big Hole Battlefield, and Battle Mountain was being threatened. Eventually it did burn. And the Park Service, they did not have their archaeologist there, and I go ask if I could be of assistance to them one day, and they're already up there wrapping the sniper trees. So there's the 2 trees up on Battle Mountain that, so the story is, one of the Nez Perce were back there, and he was able to attack in that safe manner, and help save some of his people. And then eventually, the cavalry, they saw what was going on, and the army saw what was going on, and we don't know to this day whether there's stories from both sides, whether he was killed, whether he escaped, but nonetheless, the Nez Perce believe that his spirit is in those trees. Even if he died at first night camp or second night camp, or 20 years from that battle, they still believe that he is in those trees because that was that moment in life. And so the Park Service is wrapping them. And I'm like, why are you guys wrapping them? And they said, well, we want to protect these trees. We need to save them. People come to see these. I'm like, oh. Me, being a Forest Service employee, I couldn't do anything. Being an archaeologist, I said, you know, we should really get the tribe involved in this. And sure enough, the tribe was like, let them burn. His soul can finally be released. Yeah, it's pretty powerful stuff. That's the same with down in the Goose Fire. My gosh, that area down there, a lot of tribes have vested interest in there, and they were really happy to see some of that fire go through there, you know, for multiple reasons, and some of it was so their ancestors were finally released.
Wow.
On that happy note.